Didn't want to know.
Under the radar.
Right.
Anchor Bay made the movie.
Yeah.
And that, you could say, oh, you're a horror legend.
Yeah.
I've only done 3 horror movies ever in my life.
Well, those are 3 big ones.
Nightmare 3, Nightmare 4, and the remake of I Spit on Your Grave.
Those are 3 of Hannah's favorites.
And that movie was one of the greatest acting experiences I've ever had in my life.
I was going to ask you, what does it take to prepare to play a role like that?
Well, it's so dark. Mm-hmm. It's so out there. And
now you play a rapist, am I correct?
Well, I mean, you never see me rape. But
right.
yes, yeah, I play a rapist. I play a redneck.
All right.
Kind of like a ringleader.
No. No, I'm a follower in that movie, I think. But that was, it was really interesting. It was the kind of script where, especially our director, really wanted to make it real. And the movie never got much traction in the theaters because everybody at the time was saying, you can't remake this movie today.
Well, there's a lot of remakes at the time, too, and people were getting burned out of them, too.
But it was also the subject matter. They were saying this movie was so edgy in the original that there's no way you could make it today.
Well, let me ask you, since we've got 3 great actors sitting here, me, you, and John.
And everyone we know.
Yeah, exactly. How do you, I mean, are there times, I mean, you're a decent human being. And you're called upon to do.
Don't be so quick, Mark.
All right, well, I don't know you that well, but you're a decent human being. To do these things, I mean, does the director have to push you forward, or does he have to pull you back and say, whoa, wait a second? Like, how far into it did you get?
I think everybody...
How method did you get?
Everybody knew at the beginning of shooting, our director was very clear that he wanted to make it real.
Right.
I think it's an amazing movie. I think it's such a well-directed, such a tight, great movie. It's one of the few... I hate remakes.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the few remakes that might be, no disrespect, better than the original.
I agree.
And it was the subject matter that it dealt with.
Right.
Which is, for those fans who don't know of your show, it's about basically a gang rape and revenge on the men who commit that act.
Right.
There was no way that you could fake that. There was no way that you could just go halfway with that kind of performance.
Right.
To make it real, to make it believable, to make it visceral and frightening and disgusting.
Now, when you go in,
you had to really go there.
Yeah.
And we shot that in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And we were at like a Days Inn in the middle of nowhere.
I've been to Shreveport.
Right. Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. The only good thing about Shreveport is that you could drive through at the liquor store and buy a daiquiri to go.
No, I've done that. Yeah, I used to live in New Orleans, so that's what's great about it.
Not on Sundays.
Yeah.
But not on
Monday and
Sundays.
Saturdays, you can't get Chick-fil-A, you can't get a drive-through daiquiri on Sundays. But did you feel gross when you came home? Did you feel like icky?
I didn't.
No, okay.
No, because if we were in such an isolated location to begin with.
Right.
There were 5 of us all engaged in the same act of storytelling.
Right.
You could not fake it. You had to go there 100%. I think kind of like John was talking about. I won't compare the movies, but much like Daniel Day-Lewis, he really had to go there. He really had to go for it.
Right.
Much like John with the ball in his back.
Sure.
You couldn't go halfway with that.
Absolutely.
And it was super traumatic.
Yeah.
And we pretty much shot the film in sequence.
Yeah, that's...
So it was super traumatic. It was super traumatic.
Well, you have to kind of do that, though.
But that ended up bonding all of the actors together.
Right.
It made it one of the... It's so... I'm getting chills. It's one of the weirdest things to say.
So stay away from Hannah.
That one of the hardest subject matters...
Hannah Morgan, I got you guys.
One of the hardest subject matters to deal with ended up bonding the group of actors that were all there doing it together in a way that I don't think I've ever experienced in anything I've ever worked on.
Right,
And I got to say, I'm really surprised that movie.
even a nightmare, because even a dream.
I was
of Warzone.
18.
Yeah, you're
Right.
I mean, I was a kid.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. And actually, a lot of people don't know that Daniel Day-Lewis was the original choice for High Spit on Your Grave, but you got the role instead. So I was going to say, now, John, now your real name is not Hawks.
It's not. No.
It's I had it on the tip of my tongue. I've been looking at it all week. It's I don't know what it is.
Hawks.
It's not but
Hawks.
Perkin. Oh, God, I always do this. I flooded myself with so much John Hawks, Rodney Eastman information this week. Now, how did you get Hawks?
I joined when I became a professional actor in 1986. I joined the Actors Equity Union in San Francisco, where I'd been flown to do a play.
Right.
Very exciting. Everything was great. We were rehearsing for a couple of weeks, and the publicist for the play came in and said, I just spoke with the Actors Equity representative. That's the union for live
Right.
stage actors. And he told me that there's already a John Perkins. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And she said, well, it's not good because there can't be two John Travoltas, could there?
Right.
I said, no, I guess there couldn't be. So she said, I said, well, what's that other guy going to do? And she said, no, you're going to have to change your name, and we're printing the programs in a couple hours, so get back to me. So I called my Aunt Aggie in San Mateo, rest in peace, Aunt Agnes, and she listed a bunch of family names, and this one turned out to be a married-in one, but I like the sound of it.
Yeah.
And eventually, through difficulties with the IRS and the Social Security Administration being confused as to why I was being paid under two different names often and one Social Security number, I made things easier in 1990 and changed my name permanently to John Hawks.
Okay.
My mother at the time said she was fine with that, but if I ever won an Academy Award, she'd change her name to Hawks, she said.
Oh, okay.
But she never had to, so...
Damn that Christian Bale. Anyway, I'm sorry I keep saying that, but no, it's but your performance of Winter's Bone. Now when I first and this is when I went up to you and fanboyed out and embarrassed myself when I saw you guys perform at the 5-Star Bar, and you guys are great, and we're going to hear some music later. Because one of my favorite movies probably, and I loaned Hannah the DVD. I wanted her to watch it with her grandpa, see what you think. One of my favorite movies, probably top 20 favorite movies of all time. Me, You, and Everyone We Know. And that's when I first noticed you. Now, I've seen you in Perfect Storm, From Dusk Till Dawn. A lot of people recognize you from that. Just all sorts of movies. This was kind of a lead. And it's it's what I really take from the movie, and I watched it a couple weeks ago. It's a bunch of very eccentric people that are all relatable.
It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. It's so hard to describe the movie. That's the thing. You're like, just see it. Trust me, you'll love it.
Yeah, that movie has got a lot of, I think, play internationally as well. I was in Ireland 2 summers ago, and I'm in a guitar store, and one of the employees, very kind man, but took about 5 minutes on the edge of tears, telling me how that movie had saved his life, and so that he watched it over and over through a difficult part in his life, and stuff like that. That's really cool, and a movie that can travel. It's a rare thing. It's had to play in a lot of different cultures somehow, even though it's such an oddball.
It's an odd movie. Miranda July starred in it, wrote it, directed it, and a genius.
Yeah, it was her first film. She'd done a lot of performance art in the Pacific Northwest, and she'd, I think her start with this was writing a script, submitting it to the Sundance Film Lab, and being chosen. And I wasn't part of that film lab. I've been there for other projects over the years, but that's kind of where that one got the wheels turning.
And how'd they get you?
She was interested because Michelle Satter, who runs the Sundance Lab, really thought I'd be great for the part, and Miranda, I don't know if she was convinced by any means, but I went and read for her, and Gina Kwan, the producer, and it was a super emotional kind of session. That one kind of went back and forth.
How so?
Oh, it's an emotional work, an emotional scene, and I loved the script so much.
Right.
When I read it, I really, really, really wanted the role badly.
Yeah.
and I was trying to have to kind of hold myself together through the whole process to not be desperate or weird over the whole thing. But you know, the character is a little desperate and weird.
Yeah.
Richard Swearzy.
Yeah.
But
as every character in the movie,
pretty much,
as is everybody in real life.
that's true. And so that one was I ended up inconsolable when it looked like I wouldn't be able to be in the film because I was still working on Deadwood, and I'd gotten another small movie that I couldn't. Didn't have a big part, but I said I would do it, and so it was hard to walk away from it. Somehow it ended up all working out, and I'm really glad it did.
And I remember going to see it with my girlfriend in the theater, and we heard all the, you know, so critically acclaimed. We were like, yeah, let's check it out. About 15 minutes, we both looked at each other like, this is so much better than we thought.
Oh, good. I don't know that, you know, no one loves or hates, no piece of art or human being is loved or hated by everyone, but that one's probably not for everybody.
Right.
For those who it's for, I think it's really great. It's
Yeah.
really amazing for someone who can take that trip.
And she worked at the courthouse, and we took the walk. It was a whole thing. Anyway,
Yeah.
but that, I think, I mean, that's when I first noticed it, and I was like, oh, he's American Gangster, he's in that. He's in Miami Vice. He's in like every movie like you pop up in.
Oh yeah, well I was.
Donnie Darko sequel. You're playing the motel manager. I'm like, what the? Why the hell would he even take this?
Well,
Actually, that wasn't that bad a movie. Yeah. Oh,
I don't know how the film came out because I never saw it, but I
it's actually not that bad. It's not as good as Donnie Darko, obviously, but it's not bad. No.
Yeah. It's a remake, and I kind of feel how Rodney does about remakes generally. So.
Well, it's kind of a sequel.
Wasn't it? Or was it a sequel?
It was a loose sequel. The little girl in Donnie Darko grew up, and there's a couple twists and turns. It's not great, but it's not bad.
Cool.
I mean, you know, it's just go see it for the motel manager. But
Check it out.
then it's S. Darko. Anyway,
So you did a lot of TV shows, I noticed too, and you starred in one that was a staple in my growing up, 'cause I'm from Alaska, which is Northern Exposure. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
do you remember that when he was in that?
That's
No, but I was trying to go back to find it.
Yeah.
And I
it was
couldn't find it.
Character, you
Yeah.
know, I'd been. That was a great Hollywood lesson in that. I wasn't watching a ton of television, but I remember I didn't have cable, and I was living in Hollywood in 1990, and I heard that show was good, and I didn't always trust when large groups of people liked something, but I watched it, and I was nearly banging the side of my TV going, this is free? I don't have to, this is amazing. I mean, at the time,
Right.
there weren't so many really smart shows like that going on. It was funny and heartwarming, and the stories and the characters were well drawn and amazing. So I went and auditioned for a hotel clerk and didn't get the part, and I was really bummed. And this is how life works. I think it was a month later they called me back in to read for kind of, you know, one of the two real leads of the episode, playing a health inspector, and got that part. And if I'd gotten the, you know, desk clerk part, I wouldn't. But I was so pissed off about it. I never would have gotten the really cool part.
And then you finally in S. Darko, you played a hotel desk clerk. So there you go.
I finally got to live my dream.
Was that the first like major TV show that you were on?
Let me see. It certainly was the first time I got to play a character that felt like a human being to me. I'd done some sitcoms that are probably mostly forgotten, but yeah, that was the first time I really got to play someone who felt like a live person that I could sink my teeth into.
Yeah.
Really, and the writing's so good, so that was helpful.
Because she lived Northern Exposure. You just were on the show.
I was wondering where you were from as I listened to you speak. So you're from Alaska. That's awesome.
Right.
Little island, Ketchikan.
Oh, yes.
So everybody up there watched that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And you know what else everybody watched? The Dream Warriors with this guy. Now, this was your. Now I was going to ask you: were you in Tiger Beat and like teen magazines?
I was.
I thought you might have been.
Yeah, I was.
How was that?
I don't know. I mean, that all happened when I was, you know, barely out of high school, and I mean, how is anyone at 18 and 19 years old?
I wouldn't have minded being in Tiger Beat. Come on.
Sure, I wouldn't mind being in Tiger Beat now, although that would be a little creepy. But
well, Tiger Beat's creepy. And by the way, our young fans that don't know what we're talking about, they used to have
16.
magazines where they had young boys.
Honestly, one of those?
Magazines are, I don't know if they're going out of business, but basically it was a magazine for teenage girls and pedophiles, which is
never mind, go on.
which had it had pictures of the cute, hot young men at the time, and you were one of them.
I was, and I actually only have one saved ever. I think it was the 1991 episode issue.
Yeah.
Can't remember the month of YM magazine, and I was listed as one of the 50 most eligible bachelors
In Hollywood.
in the world.
In the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the only person who had a bigger picture than me was JFK Jr. So,
Wow.
so that was.
And look
that
what
was-
happened to him.
That was pretty good for the ego.
Yeah.
You know, but,
You and JFK Jr.
but yeah, not to get too philosophical about it, but when all that was happening, I was 18, 19, 20 years old.
So you must have been going wild.
I wasn't, because it wasn't the same way that society is now. There was no TMZ culture. Even
Well, that's better.
well,
Now, you were in Hollywood
I lived
in the
in
80s.
Hollywood.
In the 80s.
I grew up in East LA. In the 80s, I was living in East LA.
Okay.
I had no connection to the business. I just got lucky. I did.
How did you start acting?
Well, I always wanted to be an actor.
Right.
But then once I was like a sophomore in high school, I thought that's an impossible goal. I had no connection to the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But a friend of my mom's.
And don't worry about them. Just go ahead.
No, I'm not worried about it. I'm not at all.
Yeah.
I grew up in East LA. I'm not worried at all.
Exactly. We're bringing you back to East LA.
Right. It's like old home week.
Yeah, all the cholos are out there just going wild. You'll hear some firecrackers in a second.
So
Roosters.
a friend of my mom's was involved in the business in some sideways kind of way,
Right.
and his friend was the first AD on a ABC after school special called "Have You Tried Talking to Patty?"
Right.
which oddly enough was starring Heather Langenkamp,
Wow.
Nancy from Nightmare,
Right.
and also Mark Patton, who was the male lead of Nightmare on Elm Street 2,
Okay. Oh, okay.
which is
The homoerotic one.
widely considered the gay Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right. It's homoerotic. Yes.
Right. And he actually has he's just made a film called My Nightmare
Right.
that's screening for Outfest at Mocha on July 21st.
Oh, I'm gonna check
So-
it out.
So
Hannah, let's go.
I had always wanted to be an actor. I was working at a Arco gas station at the time.
Okay.
I was 18.
Right.
And they needed extras that could look like high school students. When I was 18 years old, I looked like I was 14. Maybe
Okay.
13. I was a late bloomer.
Right.
And so they needed us for 2 weeks.
See, now you look like you're 18, but
You're too kind. So they needed us for 2 weeks.
mm-hmm.
So I just sat on set, and because I was young and cute, and because I had a connection to the first AD, they would always push me to the front of the crowd scenes.
Okay.
So I got to watch the actors every single day. And after, when I wanted to be an actor ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like an impossible dream. And then all of a sudden I was an actor. I was an extra on a set.
Right.
And I just watched the actors every day, and I went, that's acting? I could do that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then,
That's what John said when he saw Daniel Day-Lewis. He's like,
Very-
anybody can do that.
and so yeah, very soon after I got into an acting class, and 6 months later got an interview with an agent. And
Right.
the first job I ever auditioned for, I got the part and got into the Screen Actors Guild.
And that's Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
No. That was Children of Times Square, directed by a great director, Curtis Hanson.
Oh, okay.
Mini-
Directed LA Confidential,
Yeah.
8 Mile, yeah.
Right. His first big job, a miniseries on ABC. And then I didn't get a job for 10 months after that.
That kind of happens.
And I thought, well, that's cool. I've been on TV.
Yeah.
I gave it a shot.
Yeah.
And then I all of a sudden got a part on a really bad courtroom show called The Judge,
I don't remember that.
which was before actual People's Court or anything like that.
Right.
And that, kind of reinforced my confidence. And the next week I got a call to audition for Nightmare 3.
All right. Now we're kind of talking about now.
Yeah.
Hannah, go ahead. What were your Nightmare on Elm Street questions? Because I got a bunch.
Since you were just kind of like making it into the movies, what was it like to get a call to do a film like that?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna tell a big secret. I'm 52 years old. Oh well, I will be next week.
Yeah,
51.
Happy
Well,
birthday.
I'm the first person who lies above their age.
Yes.
But you
But
read-
so I